Hi everyone, good afternoon ladies. It is Sarah Shipton here from Scrapbooking with Sarah, and I'm coming live to you today on Tuesday, April 22nd with this week's Technique Tuesday, and I'm super excited to share this technique with you today because I had lots of fun playing with it, and I know that you are going to really enjoy adding this additional creative technique into your embossing. What we are going to be doing is ink distressing our embossing folders before you put your cardstock in them and run them through your embossing machine. So here are some little samples I have made earlier of this particular technique, and you can see here that I have inked and 3D embossed some of the 3 by 3 inch squares here on my scrapbooking layout. I also did this extended piece of cardstock as well, and I have also done this technique on the bottom of my journaling box before I've put my white cardstock over the top. So I can't wait to share this with you ladies today. I can see we've got a couple live watching. Hi Veronica, hi Mel, thanks so much for being here live. I am going to take my layout out of my memory protector for this today. You can see here that I have used a 4 by 6 inch flip flap on top of my memory protector. So I've got a portrait 4 by 6 inch photo here, and then I have stuck a flip flap over the top of that, and I've been able to get an extra 4 by 6 inch photo in here. And then this little tip I want to give you with my photos, this is something I love to do. I didn't have another 4 by 6 inch photo to stick onto the back of this one in portrait. So what I've done here is I've actually cropped 2 other photos down. These would have been 4 by 6 inch landscape photos. I've actually cropped them down into 3 by 4 inch photos, and then I've stuck them onto the back of this 4 by 6 inch photo. And I just love that. I think that is such a great tip and such a great way to get extra photos onto your layout. Let me slide my memory protector off my layout. I've also got a flip flap on my left hand side as well. This is a 3 by 3 inch square flip flap. So I love this. This is actually the other side of this photo here. So a really fun way to get those extra photos onto your layout. Hope has joined us. Hi Hope. I hope everyone had a lovely Easter break and are enjoying the school holidays. I think this is still a school holiday week if I'm correct. It's a short week though, 3 business days this week, because we also have Anzac Day on Friday. So let's talk about the layout that I'm sharing with you today. We are working with pattern number 11 on page 26, and I am using the Make It From Your Heart Volume 1 how-to pattern book. And I've actually taken some creative liberty here with this particular layout. The instructions for the layout and the cutting I have also put in our Facebook group, so you can refer to that. You are going to need 2 sheets of 12 by 12 inch paper. You can use designer series paper or you can use cardstock. And then you're going to need 2 other sheets of, again, coordinating either designer series paper or cardstock, which you're going to cut at 10 by 11 inches. As you can see here, I've used this really fun denim look, chambray denim look designer series paper. This paper is actually from the Country Lace 12 by 12 inch designer series paper. This paper is currently available for sale now in this current annual catalogue, but it is moving forward into the 2025-2026 annual catalogue, which is why I opted to use this paper, because it is carrying forward. For those of you that are starting to receive your annual catalogues, if you signed up for my catalogue mailing program, you will see towards the back of the catalogue there is now a separate section with all of the designer series paper listed, and you will see this Country Lace paper here. So I've used that as my base, and then I've used 2 sheets of white willow cardstock to do the 10 by 11 inches. And when you cut that down and you sit it in the inside of the base pages of your scrapbook, you can see you've got this nice even border, 1 inch border around the outside here, which I love. A little trick for you when you can see here, I cut this one too small and then I cut the other one bigger. When I'm using designer series paper or pattern paper with my scrapbooking, quite often what I will do is I will cut the inside square out around, because if I'm going to be covering this with other cardstock, I don't want to waste that whole bit of pattern paper. So quite often I will cut an inside square out, just using my Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. I will cut an inside square out of the designer series paper. This would have been a 10 by 10 inch square, and that would have been, I want to say that was 9 by 9 in terms of the border. I've left like a 3 inch border, and this one I've left a 2 inch border. So I do cut squares out on the inside of my paper just to save my designer series paper, and then I've got paper to use now on another layout. You can see here where I actually did mess my cutting up, but that's okay, because look, I've actually stuck the white cardstock over the top, and you can't even see here where the tiny little trim of paper was. In fact, I actually forgot I'd done that until I turned that over and I saw that cut here. But I've covered that with cardstock, right? So you will never know. Now, to do your squares, I will give you a little bit of a tip here. I have opted, you can see that there's quite a large border around where the photos and the squares are. In the pattern, they have actually cut all of the photos at 2 1/4 by 2 1/4, and also the other pattern pieces of paper are also cut at 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. But I wanted my photos to be bigger, so I have cut my photos and my cardstock, or I should say designer series paper. I've cut my photos, my cardstock, and my designer series paper at 3 by 3 inches. It's meant that I don't have as big a border around the white willow here, so I did eyeball that. You can see I've left about 1/4 inch between the cardstock and my squares, because I wanted my photos to be bigger. And then on the right hand side of the page, this was designed for a 5 by 7 inch photo. So if you've got a 5 by 7 inch photo, you can mat that, and that's going to work really well in this space. But I actually had some portrait photos, so I've opted to keep my photos at 4 by 6 inches. I've still cut my journal box at the size that it's meant to be. So the journal box, this cardstock, this is crumb cake. The crumb cake cardstock is 5 by 2 1/2 inches. And then I've cut my white willow to fit inside there, ruled my lines at 1/4 inch, and then I have done my journaling with my Stampin' Write markers. In the Neutrals collection, I've used the colour Pecan Pie, okay? So what it meant is I have got 6 squares here, and instead of having the 4 squares along the bottom, I've only got 3, okay? So that's my little tip there for you, just to give you some creative flexibility there. I know that Pauline has already posted her version of this layout to our Facebook group, and she has done hers the way that the pattern was designed. So that's a good comparison between the two. You're also going to need, depending here, I did cut some cardstock at 9 by 2 3/4 inches. And then I've done my title on there. You can see here in the pattern, they've actually done quite a large title and then just cut 1/4 inch strip of paper to put between the title and the photos. Pauline has done that as well in the layout in our Facebook group, and it looks fantastic. If you want to have another section of cardstock here, and then you can use that as like an embellishment cluster, where I've put my title on there, and then I've stamped and die cut some embellishments or stamped images out, and then I've used this for my embellishing. So this is the technique I'm going to be showing you today, where you ink up your embossing folder first, and then you run it through your embossing machine, and you get this really cool technique. So I just think it looks so cool. So to do your squares, you are going to need 3 different papers, so they can be either cardstock or designer series paper. It's entirely up to you. Alrighty, so let's talk about the pattern paper. So this blue check here is left over from my Storybook Life scrapbooking workshop kit. So I've been featuring this scrapbooking workshop kit through April, and the challenge I have got scheduled to be posted next week also uses leftover paper from this kit. But I did also pair these papers from my Storybook Life scrapbooking workshop kit together with the Timeless Plaid 6x6" designer series paper, and that's this red plaid that you can see I've used here. I've just brought in some blue, brown and red from my photos here. These photos were actually taken on the 2019 incentive trip that I earned to South America, to Buenos Aires. And Close to My Heart took us to a working ranch for the day, and we got to meet the owners of the ranch. They lived there, the family lived there, they raised their children there. They served us meal, we had wine, beautiful parrilla lunch, and then we had some horse riding time with the gauchos. So these are your traditional Argentinian gauchos working on the farm with the horses. Can I just show you their cute little tails? Oh my gosh, hang on a sec. This is on this photo here. How cute is this? They cut their tails like really short. I just thought that was the cutest thing ever. We had such a great time, and you know what? I can't even remember. I feel like this was the first time I'd ridden a horse. I could not remember riding a horse before this time. I don't actually think, I think I went horse riding when I was little as a kid, but like not as an adult. But this was just so fun. We had such a great day. It literally rates as one of the best experiences I've had whilst on holiday with the host. We had the dancing after lunch. It was just incredible, such an incredible experience. And if you ever get the opportunity to go to Argentina or Buenos Aires, then you absolutely need to do this, because they were the most incredible hosts. And in fact, actually, while I was doing the journaling for this, I looked them up on, they come up on TripAdvisor. And I think it might have been Get Your Guide, or the other travel one. Is it Aviator or Aviator, I think. Anyway, look, it was just incredible. It was so, so good. So as you know, I love a story. I love my photos. I love looking back at my photos that I've scrapbooked. It just gives me such a sense of gratitude, and I love it. So Storybook Life papers, the Timeless Plaid, and as I mentioned before, I have used the Country Lace papers to get this beautiful denim look. So you can see here where I've cut out my inside squares. I've got those left over. And this collection is just absolutely stunning. I love the blues and the greys and this beautiful peach as well. Just some really gorgeous papers to go in with your scrapbooking. So I hope that that inspires you to think a little bit differently about the papers that you're using. But when I am teaching a paper suite for the month, giving you the confidence to be able to pair up your existing papers that you may have purchased in with new products as well, which is always fun to do. In terms of the stamp and die cut set, I did use a pre-loved Close to My Heart stamp and thin cut set that I had called Life in Boots, and I have just stamped some of these images and then used the coordinating dies to cut out the boots and the hat. Obviously, this is not something that you can purchase, but if you're coming to my workshops in person, you are more than welcome to use them. I've used Cajun Craze cardstock and some of the crumb cake cardstock as well, and I've stamped them in pecan pie ink and the jet black Stays On ink, and then the little dots that I have used to accent my embellishment clusters. I have used the neutrals, the neutral matte dots, which are actually part of the current online exclusive, which you'll find on my website. So if you are adding these items to your wish list, a reminder that starting at 12:01 a.m. this evening, for anyone that likes that is a night owl or wants to stay up late, Stampin' Up has got free shipping for the next 3 days, the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of April. You will be able to get free shipping on your products. So the other items that I have used to do my title, I've used my mini alphabet dies, which is always lots of fun. And then this is a new embossing folder, which also coordinates with the dots that I was just sharing with you. This mini corrugated 3D embossing folder is part of the current online exclusives for March. I know that I will get so much use out of this because it just gives you this really cool corrugated iron look on your cardstock, and you can see where I've brought that in here. We sat in like this big kind of open shed where he was like ringing, the head gaucho was ringing the bell, and we were listening and enjoying and watching all of the horses race in front of us as well. So I've just brought in that corrugated embossing folder to give it that really fun country vibe. You could use this a lot for your outback scrapbooking photos. We've spent lots of time like in Outback SA, New South Wales, Victoria. Anything really country related, barn, farm, would work really great with this embossing folder. Now this is a 6 by 6¼ inch embossing folder. So when I ran my 3 by 3 inch squares through, I was able to do that really easily. But this longer piece here, because this is measuring 9 inches in length, I had to run it through and then open it up and then turn it around and run it through again. You can't actually feed your papers through this 3D embossing folder like you may have been able to do with some of the previous embossing folders that we used. So you won't be able to do that. You'll just have to turn it around. And you know what? Because we've inked this and it's got that corrugated iron look, you literally cannot even see here. I cannot even tell where I was actually meant to join, where I did join this cardstock up. And that's because we've done this inking technique first. So I'm super excited to share this with you before. And in fact, I'm just going to grab my Stampin' Cut and Embossing Machine. Now, let's talk about free shipping. If you were to order this machine on its own, the shipping for this is around $20-something. But I want to share with you that this embossing machine, the Stampin' Cut and Emboss, is going up in price on May 6th. So if you are in the market for a new stamping, a new embossing and die cutting machine, you are going to want to get your hands on this baby, because I know so many of you heard me share this before. This is the third die cutting and embossing machine that I've invested in 11 years. And hands down, actually it's almost 12. Oh my gosh, it is 12 years. It is the best die cutting and embossing machine that I have used. I'm not going to lie. Okay. So, and I still have my other ones. I have them as a backup, which I use if we need. My daughter actually took a previous machine I'd invested in. She keeps that at her home now. She also has an electronic die cutting machine, but it doesn't emboss. So she needs an embossing machine, right? So if you're in the market for a new machine, you will want to make sure you are adding this to your wish list over the next 3 days, because you're going to get free shipping on the machine. Plus you're going to save some money before it goes up in price on May 6th. So let's use our embossing folder. Diane's joined us. Hi, Di. How are you? Now, the little tip I want to give you with this, some of you have seen me do this technique before, and what we've actually done is very lightly sponged over the cardstock and then embossed it. But this time I'm actually going to put the ink straight onto the embossing folder and run this through. The tip I want to give you that I've done here is I have used a lighter shade of cardstock. Now you can do the lighter cardstock and the darker ink, or you can use the coordinating ink and cardstock. I've gone with crumb cake because the crumb cake cardstock was part of the coordinating cardstock colors that went with the Storybook Life scrapbooking workshop kit. And then I've just used a darker ink, Pecan Pie, which is also a coordinating color. But this is how I've got this really kind of standout effect, by using the lighter cardstock with the darker ink. So that's probably a little tip that I want to share with you. And what I'm going to do before I run this through, I'm just going to grab my paper trimmer, and I'm going to cut these down to 3 by 3 inches. I thought that was already 3 inches. in width, but it's not. So I'm just lining that up at the 3 and cutting that. I'm actually going to cut 2 squares out to demonstrate this on my video today, so you can see how you can fit 2 of the 3-inch squares in there. And the ones that I shared with you earlier were actually some samples that I did first, and I wasn't entirely happy with how they had turned out. So this is one sample where this is two-tone cardstock as well, by the way. Okay, so you can see you've got the lighter and the darker color here. This is just embossed with no ink. This is embossed obviously with the ink, but I didn't have my I didn't have the cardstock lined up properly, and it was on an angle, so that was kind of like annoying me a little bit. So I actually took it off my layout and I redid it. And then this one here, what I did was I embossed the cardstock, and then I got my ink pad and my blending brush, and I was dabbing the blending brush into the ink pad and then rubbing that over the cardstock, but it does not have the same effect. You can see that by inking the embossing folder first and then running your cardstock through, you are going to get more of that really natural distressed look, as opposed to just putting your blending brush and your ink straight onto the cardstock after it's been embossed. All right, so that's just my little tip there for you. Now, don't freak out when you do this, because, and as soon as I started my live video, I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't brought in my baby wipes. You want to make sure you've got a baby wipe on hand, because you want to be able to get the excess ink off of your embossing folder, and maybe just like some paper towel afterwards, just to clean the excess ink out of your embossing folder. And the tip that I want to give you is to, now what did I do? Did I ink the top or the bottom? I think I inked, I can't remember now. What did I do? Because when we run this through the embossing folder, I inked this side. Okay, so that's what you want to give some consideration to, especially if you're using the two-tone cardstock. Make sure you've got it up right the way that you want it to be. I'm actually going to put ink on this part of the embossing folder, because when I close that over, the ink is going to go onto the top of my cardstock. So you just want to give some consideration to that. I want to give you a little tip as well when you're opening your classic stamping pads. I have been opening them up like this, but I learned that by putting both of your thumbs on this back hinge part here of the stamping pad, if you press that down like so, both your thumbs together at the same time, that just actually pops the lid up really easily. Okay, so if you have trouble getting that lid open, then just press on that hinge bit at the back and it will pop open, and then you can flip the ink pad lid open and then slide that back into the recessed part. Now, what I'm going to do here, do not freak out, I'm actually just going to ink my embossing folder like that. I'm just pressing my Stampin' Pad straight onto the embossing folder, and then I'm going to put one of my squares in, or I probably should have inked that a bit higher up, because when I stick that on here, yes, I'm going to miss a bit there. That's 2 squares, 3 inches. So when I close that over, all right, we are going to get ink on there. So I'm just going to put another one there underneath it. I should have inked a bit closer to the inside. Oh, you know what? We can do that. What am I doing? We can just do that, right? That's the whole point, right? That's what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to pop a square just at the top there and another square here. And then I'm going to close that over and make sure that I don't get that, I don't move my cardstock around. So I've got ink on the inside of my embossing folder. I've got my embossing folder closed with my cardstock in. And now I need my plates. I've got my number 1 plate and my number 4 plate. The instructions are actually on your plates, so super easy to use. I'm going to use plate 1 and plate 4 with my 3D embossing folders. I'm going to pop that inside there, put my embossing folder over the top, And then we are going to run, sorry, not my embossing folder over the top. The embossing folder is in the middle of plate 1 and plate 4. I put plate 4 on top of my embossing folder. I'm running that through my embossing folder. Oh, one's already popped out. Look at that. And then if I open that up, like, look at that. How cool is that? It's the cutest thing ever. So you can see, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe that out with a baby wipe and a paper towel, okay? Afterwards, I'll move this over to the side so you can see this here. Now, see, look, that one's not, I haven't kept that very straight, but it's not the end of the world, right? I'm just going to bring my layout back down here. Now, obviously, you can see that's quite dark, but as it will dry, when it's dry to touch, you can touch it straight away. But obviously the ink is going to soak down into my cardstock there, and it just gives that really cool, fun, distressed look. I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So I have probably opened your mind now to a whole world of possibilities with all of the different 3D embossing folders that you can invest in, any of your classic Stampin' ink pads that you can use. You can see the ink actually comes out because these are quite juicy. They're very wet ink pads. So the ink comes out really nicely onto the embossing folder. Run it through your embossing machine and voila, you've got this gorgeous ink distress bit of cardstock. So rather than me having that as just a plain bit of cardstock on the layout, look how much better that looks, girls. It just, quite often I'll say it's just pimping up your cardstock, right? I love that. You're just pimping up your cardstock, making it look super fun. And then you've got the comparison of the non-embossed cardstock, which is fine, but that is your cardstock without the ink, and then your cardstock with the ink. Super, super cool. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Technique Tuesday. I cannot wait to see what you girls create with this week's challenge. Please post your completed layouts in the comments of the original post, which I have pinned at the top of our Facebook group. And you can always watch this video back on my YouTube, Scrapbooking with Sarah Shipton, once the 30 days has passed and Facebook deletes my videos. Have a fantastic week, everyone. I can't wait to see what you created. Bye for now.